Hey everyone, Mike here in the BFH garage. I have to deal with a problem that I was hoping to put off until the end of the season. This is the third time now that it's happened to me, and there's no other way around it right now. So I'm either looking at an engine rebuild or trying to get this thing fixed a different way. So what I have going on here is what I thought was a lifter tick, and a while back, the first time it happened, I pulled the valve cover off and discovered that one of the push rods had come out from underneath the rocker arm. My guess now, after this happening for the third time and looking at all the sludge inside that engine, is that it's most likely a stuck lifter not doing its job, and allows that rod to get out from underneath the rocker. Now, the first time this happened, the rod that got outside of the rocker was straight, but the one next to it was bent. So some things weren't quite working the way I wanted in there. I got some new push rods, put them in there, and haven't had any problems. And just the other day, it threw a push rod again outside of the rocker. It wasn't bent, so I was able to put it back in there and drive it fine. But now I have deemed this, I don't even know what to call it. I've deemed it as unreliable right now, so I wouldn't feel comfortable taking it out on the trail until I get this fixed. I'm either looking at an engine rebuild or another option, and I do have one other option in mind. A little backstory on the Jeep. I bought it. It had 113,000 miles on it. It wasn't very well maintained by the previous owner. When I took that valve cover off the first time, a lot of sludge in there, so you can tell that the motor is going to be worn quite a bit. So I'm due for a rebuild anyway, is my guess. Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I've changed oil on a regular basis. It just really started rearing its ugly head. So today, I'm gonna try a product a lot of people have heard about. It's not a surprise. I'm gonna try the Seafoam. In fact, I'm gonna try the high mileage Seafoam. I'm not sure what the difference is between that and the other one. But I'm gonna give the Seafoam a chance. So what I'm gonna do first is get the engine warmed up. Before I do that even, I'm gonna start it so you can hear what this motor sounds like. And if you're having the same experience, then we'll see if this works for you. I'm hoping that resolves it, that I am able to drive this for the rest of the season and hopefully call it reliable again after this is done. We'll see. So we'll see. I'll get it started real quick. You guys can hear what it looks like, and then I'll warm it up, throw the Seafoam in there, and we'll see what happens. So as you can hear, that's pretty horrendous. So before I do anything with this, as far as warming it up or anything else, I need to get the valve cover off. I need to fix the push rod, get it back underneath the rocker, get everything torqued back down to spec. But what that's gonna give me an opportunity to do is take just a little bit of that Seafoam and put it down each one of those holes where the lifters are, and they can work directly in there. Then I'll pour the rest of the required amount right into the oil fill, and I'll let it do its normal job. But I wanna get just a little bit where the lifters are to help them work. Then I'll warm up the engine. Then I will put in the remainder of the Seafoam and let it do its job. So first thing I need to do, get the valve cover off, get the push rod fixed, get it back on. With the valve cover off, you can clearly see my problem. So let me get this set up here. If you look closely right here, this push rod come out from underneath that rocker. So I'm gonna pull both push rods out along with both rockers and the bridle, and we're gonna see, make sure there's no damage to either one of those. I'll take a look down the bore, see if I see anything. If I don't, then I will add some of the Seafoam down into those areas, but just a little bit, because you don't want to put too much of that stuff in there apparently. But with that being said, you can see all the sludge and everything built up on the heads there. So this is going to be hopefully fixed by this. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. If not, my season is going to be put on hold till I can get a the motor rebuilt. So let's get those push rods out of there. So if you're not familiar with engine work, you need to be careful because there's some things that you can do that will damage the engine or you'll lose parts, things like that. In this particular case here, it is a fairly straightforward and actually a simple job. Hardest part's probably getting the valve cover off. But you have 2 1/2-inch bolts right here that hold this, the rockers down together. So you want to loosen those. And when you torque those back up, at least on this TJ, it only requires 85 inch-pounds of torque, and you want to sneak up on that, meaning that as you tighten this, you want to tighten this one a little bit, this one a little bit, this one a little bit, until you get to your final torque. But 85 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, 85 inch-pounds isn't that much, but you want to make sure you get it done right. You also want to make sure you get your push rod back down in the hole where it goes. It'll fit in there one specific way. You'll feel it. And then you can put your rockers back on and go from there. So you pull these 2 bolts out and then you get that bridle off. Now, another thing about engine work you want to make sure you do, at least on this side here, is you want to keep everything in the order in which it came off. So I'm going to pull this off just like this, put it over here. I'm going to pull both of these rockers off and keep them on the side that they came off of. They establish wear patterns. You want to make sure that they go back on the exact same way. So this is the push rod that came out from underneath the rocker. Let's take a look, pull that straight out. I'll have to take a little bit closer look at that. I can't look just yet because I got my hands full of oil. This is the one on the other side. I'm going to put that over here. I'm going to take it over to my little table there and we're going to inspect this stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is wipe everything down. Get all the oil off of it. And again, keeping it in its orientation. Next, I'm going to inspect for any physical damage. So make sure there's no abnormal wear on any of this. There's not a reason that it would be popping out from underneath that. I'll use push rods and make sure they're straight, looking at them. See, that one that's the one that fell out from underneath the rocker now. It's not bent. It's actually really straight. The other one last time, this is the one that was bent and it didn't fall outside the rocker, but this one is straight too, so there's no abnormal wear or anything that is sticking out to me. It doesn't mean that, you know, there's not something there that I'm just not seeing, but with as many miles on this engine, right now 138,000, I'm just going to go ahead and try to seafoam it and see if that will dissolve a lot of this stuff. And if it does and allows it to run better and I can get another, at least the rest of this season out of it, I'm going to be a happy man. So let's get the seafoam ready. We'll put it down those injector, or not the injector, but the push rod holes. And again, that's going to be just a very tiny bit just to get it in that specific area. And then I'll pour the majority of what is the recommended amount into the actual crankcase. So let's get that done. If you've not watched other videos on Seafoam on YouTube, then it's worth taking a look. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to use a straw. I've already tested to make sure that it's not going to dissolve or anything like that. I'm using very, very little. Nope, actually didn't get any of that. I want to get them right down the injector hole. And hopefully that cleans those up. All I have left to do now is reassemble. So I'm going to take my push rods and make sure they fall into where they're supposed to go, into the tappet there. Take a little bit of oil, make sure they're lubed up. Now if your push rods sit one higher than the other, that's fine. That's means your one valve's open, one valve's closed. We're going to set the rockers on top, get our bridge, set that in place. And I would lube this up as well because we don't want it to be metal on metal, and eventually oil will get up in there, but we'll get a little bit of lubrication there. And you have to start these bolts in there. And again, these, I think I said earlier that these get torqued to 85. I can't remember if I'm not. That's the actual valve cover. These here, at least on a TJ, these get torqued to 21 foot-pounds. So I want to make sure I clarify that. The valve cover, though, does go to 85. So I'm going to get those snug first, just by fingers. Make sure everything's all straight. Take my socket, and again, we're slowly getting these tightened up. That way, one's not getting ahead of the other and bending anything. That one's snug. That one's snug. Now onto the torque wrench. Now it's set a little bit light, and then I'll do a final torque. Now we need to go to 21. Give final torque. That's it, we'll get the valve cover back on. Just so you know, when you go to torque your valve cover, the factory service manual has you starting over here and you work in a circular pattern. So you're gonna go from here to this one, to this one, to this one over here, to this one over here, to this one over here, and you work out in that circular pattern. And again, the torque spec on that on a TJ anyway is 85 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, but inch-pounds. Once you get your valve cover installed and torqued down to spec, then you need to make all these other connections that, you know, we had to take everything apart, your intake, all that stuff. Make sure you get all that stuff on there. Make sure you get your fuel injector rail snapped in place. Everything's back in place, and then we need to start it up, warm it up. I'm just going off the research I did on YouTube. People say to warm it up, pour some in, you know, a third of the can, let it start to smoke a little bit, then shut it down. And what we're doing is we're heat soaking there. So I need to warm this engine up first. So with the push rod being put back in place now, that tick should be gone. So we may hear a little bit of a tick. I'm not sure based on how much oil's in there, but that should be gone for the most part. But my goal is to put the Seafoam in here and clean the deposits around that lifter to make sure that it's not getting stuck anymore. So let's start this up and see what it sounds like. As you can hear, that sounds a lot better. That push rod is not out anymore. That tick is gone. So I'm gonna let this warm up for a little bit. We'll pour that Seafoam in there and see if that solves the problem somewhat long term. Well, I'm gonna have to wrap up this video and make the statement that the jury's still out on this. So I put it in the crankcase, let it get through the oil. That bad ticking that was going on is gone, but I don't know if that's just simply because I put the push rod back in place and buttoned it back up. So by putting it in the crankcase, I didn't get the major oil smoke production that everybody talks about, that smoke screen type of deal. So I'm not sure whether it's getting to the point of where it needs to be. So I'm gonna run it for a little bit, and then I'm gonna come back and attempt to do another dose of this, but put it in through through an intake vacuum line and let it get into the cylinders that way, heat soak it, let it sit, and then run it out. So for right now, jury's out, but I will follow up this video.